Morgan Freeman, the of God, the soul of cinema, the man whose very presence could command silence. For over 5 decades, he was Hollywood's moral compass, a pillar of wisdom, strength, and quiet dignity. But behind that calm exterior and the soothing voice that millions adored, lies a tragedy few truly understand. Now at 88, Morgan Freeman carries not just the weight of a remarkable career, but of profound personal loss, physical pain, and a loneliness that fame could never cure. From the heights of Oscar-winning glory to the shadows of scandal, heartbreak and debilitating injury, his life is a tale of resilience often confused for happiness. Freeman is not just an actor, he's a survivor. But what exactly has he survived? What truths has he kept hidden from the public eye for decades? And why is his final chapter so filled with quiet sorrow? In this emotional journey, we pull back the curtain on a man whose life, though celebrated, has been riddled with pain, loss of loved ones, accusations that shook his reputation, and a near-fatal accident that changed his body forever. This is not the story you think you know. This is not just about Hollywood. This is about a man who gave the world everything, and yet found himself alone in the end. At 88, the tragedy of Morgan Freeman is beyond heartbreaking. And once you hear what he's endured, you'll never look at him the same way again. From the outside, Morgan Freeman's life appeared to be a majestic success story, one of those rare Hollywood journeys built not on luck or privilege, but perseverance. His deep, authoritative voice became one of the most recognizable in the world, narrating films, commercials, documentaries, and even moments of national grief. But what that voice never told us was the agony it was masking. Born in 1937 in Memphis, Tennessee, Freeman was raised in a household marked by instability and poverty. His mother was a schoolteacher. His father, a barber who died of cirrhosis when Morgan was just 24. There was never much money, and the family moved often, chasing jobs and hope across the South. Even as a boy, Freeman knew pain and loss, but he also knew how to hide it. He turned to acting early on, not for fame, but for escape. But it would take decades for the world to notice him. Freeman didn't land a major film role until he was nearly 50. Before that, he endured countless rejections, worked in low-paying theater gigs, and struggled to pay bills. He often watched younger, less talented actors leapfrog ahead of him simply because they fit the mold Hollywood adored. Yet he never gave up. When his breakout role finally came in Street Smart, 1987, it was no fairy tale. He was already a man weathered by life, divorced, heartbroken, and emotionally distant from those around him. But still he smiled. Still, he showed up. And when Driving Miss Daisy and Glory followed, Freeman finally became a household name. Yet success didn't erase the trauma. In fact, the higher he rose, the more isolated he became. Fame for Freeman was a cold companion. He often spoke about the curse of being typecast, the wise old man, the moral authority, the angelic narrator. Hollywood praised his presence but rarely gave him range. He was celebrated but confined. And then came the car accident in 2008, a near-fatal crash in Mississippi that left him with permanent nerve damage in his left hand. The injury was so severe that he now lives with chronic pain every single day. His hand, now mostly paralyzed, is often hidden from the camera. He can't ride horses anymore. He can't sail his beloved boat. He can't sleep through the night without feeling shooting pain. And yet, he never complains. The man who played God on screen lives with a suffering that no audience can see. But perhaps the most heartbreaking part of Morgan Freeman's story isn't his childhood or his injury. It's the loneliness. Though he's been married and in long-term relationships, Freeman has always remained emotionally guarded. In interviews, his words are careful, filtered, distant. Those close to him say he spends most of his time alone, reading, watching television, or quietly reflecting. And when his granddaughter Edina Hines was tragically murdered in 2015, stabbed 25 times in a public attack, it shattered whatever was left of his personal sanctuary. The grief was so immense, Freeman withdrew from public appearances for months. The tragedy wasn't just in the loss of a loved one. It was in the haunting realization that even a man who brought light to millions couldn't protect the ones he loved most. As Morgan Freeman enters his 89th year, the world continues to celebrate his accomplishments, but few truly acknowledge the sorrow that has walked beside him every step of the way. Behind the calm voice and timeless smile lies a man who has lost far more than he's ever gained. And now, in the twilight of his life, that quiet suffering has become impossible to ignore. Morgan Freeman had weathered many storms by the time the darkest day of his life arrived, a tragedy that no amount of fame, fortune, or wisdom could prepare him for. In August of 2015, the unthinkable happened. His beloved step-granddaughter, Edina Hines, was brutally murdered in the streets of New York, stabbed over 24 times by her boyfriend in what witnesses described as a frenzied, almost ritualistic attack. The young woman who had once referred to Freeman as her papa died in front of neighbors and strangers. The headlines were brutal. The details were grotesque. But what few people truly understood was just how close Freeman was to Edina. She wasn't just a step-granddaughter by marriage. She was in many ways the emotional core of his fractured personal life. He had helped raise her. He had guided her toward acting. He supported her dreams and paid for her education. She was a bright light in a life often dimmed by loneliness. And when she was taken from him in such a violent way, something inside Freeman died too. The media, merciless as ever, quickly stirred up long-standing and unfounded rumors, allegations of an inappropriate relationship between Freeman and Edina that had previously been denied and never proven. Though no charges were ever filed and the family vehemently refuted the claims, the scandal only deepened Freeman's pain, dragging him into the kind of public nightmare that few could endure. For a man known for playing the voice of reason and morality, the speculation cut deeply, forcing him into silence. He didn't lash out. He didn't sue. He simply retreated into himself, as he always had. But those who knew him during that time said he was never the same again. At award shows and interviews, his energy shifted, no longer the wise, fatherly figure, but a haunted man going through the motions. Behind the scenes, his health continued to decline. His hand, injured in that 2008 car crash, remained useless and a constant source of pain. He began turning down roles, not just because of age, but because of emotional fatigue. And in private moments, he was often seen clutching Edina's photo, her presence still lingering in the only way it could, through memories. The loss wasn't just personal. It symbolized everything Freeman had spent his life trying to outrun: abandonment, grief, betrayal by those closest to him. And in the quiet aftermath of her death, he was forced to confront the hollowness of a life built in the public eye, but stripped of genuine human connection. He had played fathers, mentors, kings, presidents, even God, but he couldn't protect the one person who needed him most. The guilt, whether justified or not, settled into his bones and refused to leave. At 88, Morgan Freeman doesn't speak much about Edina anymore. When asked, he offers a polite nod, a short answer, and then moves on. But those brief moments of silence say more than words ever could. They reveal the ache of a man who has given the world every ounce of himself, yet couldn't stop the world from taking the one thing he cherished most. And in those silences, those pregnant pauses between sentences, you can hear it, the deep, unspoken heartbreak of a grandfather, a father figure, a man who will never forgive himself for not being there when it mattered most. While Morgan Freeman's public image has long been one of reverence and respect, the truth is that fame didn't solve his inner battles. It only hid them deeper beneath a polished exterior. With an Academy Award, multiple Golden Globes, and a career spanning more than 50 years, Freeman had achieved the kind of recognition most actors only dream of. He was beloved by directors, adored by co-stars, and idolized by millions across the globe. But behind the smiles on red carpets and the dignified speeches at awards shows was a man slowly unraveling under the weight of personal disappointments, strained relationships, and a creeping sense of purposelessness that fame could never cure. By his own admission, Freeman has lived a life filled with regret, especially in the realm of love. His marriage to Jeanette Adair Bradshaw, which lasted over a decade, ended in divorce in 1979, and though he later married costume designer Myrna Colley Lee, that too crumbled after 26 years. The split was painful and public, involving tabloid rumors and legal battles. Freeman, known for his calm demeanor, was forced to address deeply personal matters in courtrooms and in the media spotlight, a humiliation that left him emotionally closed off for years. While others saw him as Hollywood royalty, he often returned home to silence. No partner, no warmth, only the echoes of a past he couldn't seem to reconcile. The scandal involving Edina Hines further tarnished his reputation, regardless of its veracity, casting a long shadow over his legacy and isolating him from many in the industry who once revered him. But even before all that, Freeman often spoke about the burden of being typecast, not just in roles, but in life. He once said, "People don't see me, they see what they want me to be. That's not living, that's performing." And perhaps that was the most devastating truth of all. Morgan Freeman, the man, became a product to be consumed. The wisdom he dispensed on screen became the expectation in real life. He wasn't allowed to falter, or grieve, or express doubt. He had to be everyone's guiding light, even when his own path had gone dark. It's no surprise, then, that in recent years, Freeman has pulled away from the spotlight. He rarely gives interviews. He turns down roles he once would have embraced. He spends much of his time on his ranch in Mississippi, far from the cameras and applause, living in quiet seclusion. The man who once narrated the human experience now keeps his own life hidden from view. And yet that isolation isn't just a choice, it's a consequence. The pain of losing Edina, the scandal that followed, the toll of aging, the chronic pain in his body, the erosion of his personal relationships. All of it has led him to a place of deep solitude. He may still appear in films from time to time, his voice still as commanding as ever, but the fire in his eyes, the one that lit up the Shawshank Redemption, $1 Million Baby, and Invictus, seems dimmed. Morgan Freeman has spent a lifetime giving voice to others, but who has ever truly listened to his? Beneath the surface of fame lies a man who has endured more heartbreak than most could fathom. And now, as he nears the end of his journey, that heartbreak seems to have become his most constant companion. As Morgan Freeman stands quietly on the threshold of 89, what remains isn't just a catalog of iconic films or a legacy carved into the history of cinema. What remains is a man, stripped of pretense, finally confronting the weight of a life that was never truly his own. After all the applause fades and the cameras stop rolling, what's left is the silence. The kind that fills the hallways of his secluded Mississippi ranch. The kind that lingers in the space between memory and regret. For decades, Freeman gave the world everything he had, his voice, his strength, his presence. He embodied hope, justice, redemption, but few ever wondered who would give something back to him. The truth is, behind every performance was a man yearning for meaning, for connection, for peace. And in many ways, that peace eluded him. His health continues to decline, not in dramatic headline-grabbing ways, but slowly, persistently. The nerve damage from his 2008 crash has worsened with age, affecting his mobility and sleep. The pain is chronic, invasive, and emotionally exhausting. In interviews, when he speaks about it, his eyes reveal more than his words ever could. The pain isn't just physical. It's a constant reminder of fragility, of lost time, of the things he can no longer do. His once strong hands, capable of commanding presence with just a gesture, now tremble slightly. His once booming laugh has softened. He appears at fewer events, gives fewer speeches, and walks more slowly now, supported sometimes, always watched closely. Those who work with him speak of a man who is kind but tired, present but distant. There is still wisdom in his voice, but it's coated in weariness. Yet despite it all, Freeman refuses to play the victim. He has never demanded pity or begged for attention. Instead, he retreats into the shadows with grace, much like the characters he once portrayed, dignified, silent, bearing burdens no one else can see. And still, even in retreat, he teaches us something profound, that true greatness doesn't lie in fame or wealth, but in perseverance through unbearable sorrow. The tragedy of Morgan Freeman is not in how his story is ending, but in how lonely the path has been despite everything he gave. He was always more than an actor. He was a storyteller, a moral compass, a figure of reassurance in an uncertain world. And yet, in his own uncertainty, few have reached out to reassure him. The ones he trusted most are gone. The granddaughter he loved is buried. The industry he served now celebrates younger voices. And as he watches the world move on, he does so with quiet acceptance, not bitterness. But the sadness never leaves his eyes. His films may live forever, but Morgan Freeman, the man, has been slowly fading into the background, his final chapter written not in accolades, but in solitude. And as we celebrate him, we must also recognize the depth of his pain, the legacy of a life that, for all its brilliance, was marked by unimaginable heartache. Because sometimes, the people who shine the brightest on screen are the ones suffering the most once the spotlight fades. And in the case of Morgan Freeman, that heartbreak is far deeper than most will ever realize.